What is on your holiday menu? Are you going to bring home a possum, stuff it with some sweet potatoes, and serve it to your family? Are you eating the critters that you kill? Well, in this episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast, the team sits down and we discuss what we're eating, why we're eating it, and is it a fad? Is it a new cultural trend? Is it an old tradition? We're bringing all that back, and we're going to open that up and discuss everything to do with the culture of eating wild game. There are a lot of laughs in this podcast, a lot of fun we had making it, but we're also going to have some serious talks about some of the hazards of eating wild game, such as trichinosis, and some of the precautions you should take before you throw that critter on the plate and belly up to it at the table. So you're really going to enjoy this episode. We had a lot of fun making it. Before we get started with the podcast, I just want to say it again. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for spending your time with Houndsman XP. Yeah, see, that's something that's why I would bring my own rig.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Are you scared of roller
I was a
coasters?
driving instructor. No, I was a driving instructor for several years, emergency driving. I can drive the wheels off of most things, but yeah.
You don't like being a passenger?
I was always a passenger.
Oh, we're perfectly fine. He's just not used to it. It's all flat ground, right? He's just not used to flying cross pasture. So, I mean, he just got scared. Everyone else was fine.
It would have to be, it would be like, I don't know. Lauren, what do you think? I mean, putting your life in Seth's hands.
That's very hurtful.
I mean, as long as there's a place to grab on.
Yeah, there's rails everywhere, and you're buckled in.
You know,
so.
I don't have a choice. I don't have a rig to bring. So.
Do you have like a 5-point racing harness, or is this just like the standard factory lap belt with the shoulder harness?
That, yeah. But I mean, did you watch the video, Chris?
I haven't watched the video.
Well, if you watch it, that's as wild as it gets.
Yeah, it's not wild.
Yeah, exactly.
It is so flat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just bumpy. He's all scared. He's old, though. Old people get scared.
It's like that meme where the army trucks are going over the bumps. It's like right into my favorite hunting spot. Yeah. It's like that, but sped up times like 1,000.
Cool.
At no point were we faster than 50.
50 miles an hour driving blind across a prairie in tall grass.
No.
Let me tell you a story, okay? So, yeah. Buddy of mine's got a Can-Am, and another buddy of mine was riding with him. And they were flying back through this field. It was flat. It was all cool, you know? It's like, oh, no problem. But the passenger says, hey, you want me to kind of walk out through there before you go tearing through there to make sure that there isn't anything sticking up, because they were going to recover a deer. And the other one's like, no, it'll be fine. I've driven through here before. They're driving down through there in his Can-Am, and there was a steel T-post, fence post, that was bent over, and it jammed up through the floorboard on the passenger side, and was like 3 inches away from just impaling my other buddy right through the chest.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
So before you get too many terrified fantasies in your head, watch that video and you'll see this is New Mexico desert. You see like 99% of the ground. It's all clump grass.
If I was driving, it would be cool. I'd drive 50 miles an hour across it. But when I'm riding with somebody else, it's like, nah, I don't trust you.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people get. No, you're not alone. The thing is that where we hunt, we're only allowed one vehicle, so you can drive. I'll just take pictures.
Yeah. The funny thing is, when I used to train recruits and stuff, you'd have them out on their field training and man, those guys, we'd be romping. They'd get an emergency call and they'd be trying to drive the speed limit because, I'm there as an evaluator. So they're trying to drive the speed limit with their lights and siren on. It's like, what are you doing? The only thing you got to just show due regard at intersections. The rest of the time, and while you're driving, you got to show due regard for public safety. Can't drive reckless, but you can't have people passing you either when you got lights and sirens on. That's just embarrassing. So, But there were some times when it was like, holy crap, I can't believe we lived through that. But I always kept my mouth shut, and then I evaluated later. It's like, okay, so how you feel about your driving right there? It's like, it's kind of fast. It's like, yeah, it was real fast. So when you drive, you're supposed to drive at 85% of your ability when you're emergency driving. You never drive above 85 because then it gives you 15% for error.
When you'll see, it's not as bad as you think.
Oh,
Watch
I don't
that
think
video.
it's bad. I'm just giving you a bunch of crap.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's wild, man. And that's what
Yep.
Paul's saying at the end. He's like, the first one, I don't know, I was pretty scared. He's like, the second one, it's good, and I'm glad because his dog did a front flip catching the rabbit. It was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Lauren, did you see the end of the video?
No, it started buffering, and I was like, I'll pull this up later on the big screen.
Oh yeah, dude, the end is so sweet. The first half is kind of lame. My buddy didn't really know how to film yet, so he'll get there. But anyway, I'm excited for today's episode. This is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a long time.
What are we talking about?
Food.
Oh, food?
Animal food.
Animal food or
Animals food.
as food?
Animals as food.
Yeah.
Animals. Hey, before we get there, let me look something up here real quick because we have got to make a correction. And I got to find this guy's name. Super, super cool dude. He's from South Africa. So we have listeners in South Africa. And which I think is
my cousin's in South Africa right now.
Is he
that's where
listening
his
to
wife is from.
Is he listening to the podcast?
No.
Why not? He could be
They
listening to his cousin Lauren.
Yeah, they don't jive with what I'm doing, I don't think.
Well, I think it's cool that we've got listeners from around the globe, and I also think it's really, really cool when our listeners reach out and correspond with us. And,
I love that. Yep.
Yep. So this is from Gavin, and I'm going to misspell his name. It's Lipjes, so I'm going to say Lippius. Gavin Lippius says, "Hi, Chris. Really enjoy your podcast and gratefully pick up some new knowledge or am pleased when some of my own observations and experiences are confirmed by others. Listen to your insert about barometric pressure and wanted to share how closely we monitor this when tracking in Africa. It is of a huge impact for the sending ability during the time of tracking, but also very important to have knowledge of the pressure conditions at the stage when the scent was deposited. A friendly correction." And this is where you get that Homer Simpson moment because this is obvious and we just totally screwed it up. But it's just really common sense. He's spot on. It says a friendly correction. A low pressure is rising air. High pressure is sinking air. Low is bad for scent. High is good. The Garmin Alpha, this is what I thought was really cool too. The Garmin Alpha 100 has a function that displays barometric pressure, but he wears some kind of Sunto watch that shows a 48-hour graph of the pressure history, which is very helpful to understand the hound behavior during tracking. So we had it completely backwards, and it seemed like it should have made sense. It was making sense of my hillbilly brain when I said it, even before the podcast I researched it. I just had it backwards. So low pressure, the amount of air pushing down on the point that it's measured is not as heavy. And high pressure, there's more pressure pushing down at the point of measurement. So it totally makes sense that high pressure is pushing air down.
Yeah, so he says there's something on the Alpha 100.
Yes, and I haven't looked for it yet.
I mean, I've got my 200 in my hand right now. I don't even know where you'd look.
I don't either.
Huh. Yeah,
but
that's a very important correction.
Maybe that's a...
Yeah, because we were talking about high pressure, then high pressure. I had it in my mind. The reason I got it flipped around is one, because I just had it flipped around. But high pressure, I was thinking, well, it's higher in the atmosphere, so it's going to go up. And man, that I really appreciate Gavin reaching out to us and letting us have that correction. But I'm sure that's not the only one that we've ever made. But
no, I got a friendly one too, and I was like, duh, I misspoke. And it's when you're on the fly. Me and Lauren were once talking about house fires being caused by people's oil catching on fire. And me and Lauren were like, yeah, just carry it outside. Like, don't pour water on it. And the dude was like, don't ever carry it outside because it's splattering everywhere. He's like, don't. He's like, oh, just put a lid on it and let it go out on its own. Mm-hmm. And I was like, duh, I freaking knew that. Like, I felt like a dunce. So maybe while we're on corrections,
we trust you with. We trust you. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lauren.
It was just lit. I was just saying it wasn't splattering. It was just lit.
He said like a lot of people panic and spill the burning oil, like on the way out, or slip or whatever.
Yeah. So you trust us with the knowledge about scent hounds and side hounds, but don't trust us with house fires.
Hey, I'm a houndsman, not a firefighter. Damn it.
Well, speaking of fires and kitchen fires and everything else, we're going to have a few kitchen fires today on the podcast, I think. And I think I want to dive into that conversation about eat or not to eat. That's the question. And I think this is going to be an interesting topic. Totally. And I trolled for some comments on the internet or on social media a couple weeks ago. And that was kind of interesting. For one, it sparked a lot of interest. And the other thing is the topic actually got somebody booted out of our group because they can't
keep their filter on for cussing.
What happened? I didn't see that.
He just swore. I didn't see his comment after you said keep it clean or whatever.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was one of those deals. It was, there's one word if you watch The Christmas Story. Have you ever seen The Christmas Story? That movie where you've never watched The Christmas Story.
I got a confession to make, guys. I've seen like 12 movies in my whole life, start to finish. It's pretty.
Lauren, let's you and I talk for a while.
Like a dog.
Let's talk. Let's just exclude Seth from this conversation right now. Anyway, there's the one magic word that is not acceptable in most circles, and we try to run a group that is clean and so that if somebody's sitting there and looking at pictures with their fourth grader on the internet or on social media, that they can do that without the fear of somebody screwing up the whole post. Mm-hmm. So, and it's right in our rules, There's 2 rules: no profanity, and don't try to sell stuff on our site. It's pretty simple. And I even gave him the opportunity to change it. I said edit it or say goodbye. And then he went off again. So he made his decision.
Was it the C word?
That's a pretty good one though, but it was the more common F word.
The F bomb. Okay,
the F bomb. Dropping the F bomb on the Houndsman XP podcast group is not acceptable. So,
yep.
I don't know. I mean, if you can't respond to a post,
it's easy to not use it. We'll put it that way.
It really is. Yeah, it's easy to not be an animal, but for some people, it's not. So
yeah. But most people that I know that are pretty fluent in the F bomb can have enough sense not to use it at certain times. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm super fluent in that word, unfortunately.
Yeah, me and Lauren, I mean, we're pretty vulgar on just like normal speak, but not online and not in a professional manner. You don't go into your job talking like an animal sailor.
Yeah. Hi, I'd like to marry my name's Seth, and I'd like to marry your daughter. That's not the time to be using the F-bomb.
Exactly.
You know, that's not it.
Yeah, exactly. People are just...
My name's Lauren, and I'm a professional. This is a nice effing place you got here. You're hired.
You're hired. Yeah. I mean, people some people just have the social intelligence of like a baboon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. But we don't have many problems at all on the.
I agree.
I don't think I haven't hardly ever deleted a comment on our group. So, kudos to our listeners and our houndsmen. But at any rate, so we were trolling. The way we got sidetracked on that is I was trolling for some answers, and people were kind of vague, and they pretty much just talked about what types of game that they ate, and I want to talk about the kind of a new trend that I'm seeing in the hunting community about what to eat and why people eat and what they're eating. And it's a deal where I want to boil it down and find out why people are eating raccoons and possums and anything else that they shoot.
That sounds good. Let's get to it. I love it. I read your notes and I kind of wrote some things down, but because I spend a lot of time talking to people that don't hunt or have like very left-wing views. So I've had a lot of talks about this exact topic to people that are completely outside of the hunting community and drive a lot of these like kind of progressive trends in general. So,
well, I think the first place to start is that it's a cultural thing in the new hunting community. Fred Bear never talked about eating raccoons and possums and all that other stuff. But I know that, back during the Depression, my great-grandmother would cook a possum for the family. But that was because they needed food. Okay, it wasn't something that was just like, oh, guess what we're having tonight? We're having the neighbors over and we're going to eat a possum. They're going to love it.
Let's not burn up good conversation. This is great. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's roll.
Well, I'm doing it right now. So I think the first thing is it's a cultural thing where people are trying to justify hunting with if I kill it, if I can't eat it, I shouldn't kill it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My dad has been telling me that since I started hunting, when I could carry a Red Ryder BB gun. If you won't eat it, don't shoot it. But he never really enforced it because we just, like my uncle would give me a nickel for every blackbird we shot because they got in his cow food. So it was like, I don't know, like I think like buried in the ethos of everybody knows that eating what you kill is right. But at the same time, it's not like blackbirds are gross. You know what I mean? So like they're not. Now, that being said, I didn't really get super adventurous with eating crazy, quote unquote, crazy stuff until I was in my mid-20s. And I mean, I've tried virtually everything you can imagine in New Mexico: kangaroo rats, roadrunners, snakes, coyotes, like all kinds of stuff. And I'm just glad I was armed with the internet to kind of help me out, because some of those animals can be really sketchy to eat. And I think there's a lot of like historic precedents set for how to, like, what animals are taboo and what animals are safe to eat. And yeah.
Lauren, let's get your take. I want to hear your take on it because you're the one that really inspired this whole thing, posting pictures of cooking raccoons.
Hey, I don't think I've posted any pictures like actually cooking them recently, but shared some funny stuff on Facebook or something. So, I'm a fairly new hunter, and people in my family before me didn't hunt. So I never grew up eating wild game or anything like that. So I started hunting, and my mentor and good friend and basically grandpa, Max, he's 80 something. So, and he grew up really, really poor. So they had to actually eat these critters in order to survive: raccoon, possum, squirrel, woodchuck, whatever it was. But that kind of made me curious. And, I shot this raccoon and I saw this really interesting and made it look good recipe online. I think it was last year or the year before. And it's called Brined Bandit. And it was a recipe on Outdoor Life.
That is awesome.
No kidding.
Yeah. And the recipe had like 1,000 ingredients and steps. It's very complicated. Would I recommend it? If you've got time.
What's that mean? If you've got time, is it complicated?
It's very complicated. Like it's, braised or oven, and then you braise it, and there's beer involved in the braising, and
everything has beer involved in Wisconsin.
And there's the brining beforehand, and it was a lot of steps, and it was crazy. It was good. It made the raccoon taste like lamb. But anyway, so
why wouldn't you just eat lamb?
You know what? That'd be a lot easier, honestly. Raccoons are, never mind the recipe, but raccoons are just not horrible, just tedious to clean and break down and everything. So my take on it is, at least from the raccoon standpoint, is I wanted to see what it tasted like. I'm shooting all these things out. I might as well just see what it's all about, when people talk about it. I did feel an obligation to eat it. Not every single one or anything like that, but I'm like, I've got all these resources, why don't I just eat it? And I don't eat a whole lot of meat in general.
But when I do,
it's raccoon. So it was like, yeah, I kind of felt guilty. I wanted to see what it was like, and like, no one's pressuring me to eat it or anything. So, I'm not giving into peer pressure. What I probably will now cook for myself, like one a year. The dogs really like it, but honestly, for me, it's like way too much work. It is just way too much work. The best thing, so I've done raccoon like a couple different ways, and I've had it a couple different ways, but the best way, honestly, that I've had it, and people at the Coon Club tried it who normally would not even eat raccoon, was raccoon jerky that Andrea made, actually. And that was the best.
That's interesting.
It was, like Cajun flavor. I'm not sure. Some seasoning, probably from Cabela's or something. So that was the best way that I've had it. But as far as raccoon is concerned, it was see if I like it. Is it worth it? Kind of feel an obligation, but now I'm like, who cares? If I have the time, I'll break some down and cook the legs for the dogs. If not, whatever.
Well, do you think it's kind of a fad? Am I misreading this? I think, is it kind of a fad right now? No, I'm just talking about I'm just talking about hunting, eating animals in general. Is it a fad with some of the current media and culture out there?
Pressures. Yeah, I think a lot of it is social pressure. Like, well, then why are you even hunting? It's just one way for some people to justify why they're hunting. So I was talking to someone the other day saying like, oh yeah, well, I might go shoot a mountain lion this winter. And they're like, why? Like, what would you do with it? And I'm like, well, I'd eat it, and I'd, get the hide tanned or whatever. And it just was like, why do I even have to explain this?
Mm-hmm.
Tangentially, that kind of like opens a whole nother can of worms, because I agree with you, Chris. I think, modern views on hunting have evolved so much compared to like, the rebirth of American outdoorsmanship post World War II. And I think armed with the knowledge that we have today, we can venture out and eat animals that traditionally weren't viewed as food, because we know, like, for instance, like I was saying earlier, some animals were taboo culturally to eat because they harbor diseases that aren't exactly the most fun to have. Raccoons have a lot of icky stuff that live in their body that can make humans very, very sick if we don't cook them properly. But now we know, get the internal temperature up to 160 for at least a minute and a half to kill trichinosis, leptospirosis, all these other diseases that they have. And with that, it allows us to kind of be more adventurous with our food. And I like Lauren was saying, it is a lot of work. to break down such a small animal for a meal. And I guess the answer is yes and no, at least from my take for the fad. Is it fad? Because like a mountain lion, it is kind of a justification thing, I suppose, although tangentially, mountain lion meat is amazing. And when I was at the New Mexico Houndsman Association's night hunt event, our friend Rick cooked up some mountain lion, and it was awesome. So yes, they're good to eat. You can totally eat them, but you just need to know that and Rick was explaining, which made me very happy, but you got to cook mountain lion meat up to 160 because they commonly have trichinosis. So like, I think it's a way to make hunting very palatable to people, both literally and metaphorically, but it's really complicated because like my game animal is a rabbit. Hares have been eaten for millennia. They're delicacies in part of the world, but have you eaten a jackrabbit before, Chris?
I've never eaten a jackrabbit. I've never killed a jackrabbit, but I ate a snowshoe hare last week.
You said it's not good for your jackrabbit, Seth, just because of all the, stress that they go through or whatever when the dogs are running them down, the lactic acid and all that makes them tough and nasty.
So yeah, like that's the thing I was going to get to is like conditions of life, conditions of death, and like what they were up to when they were alive. But yeah, like people think jackrabbits are like disgusting and they're inedible, and they kind of picked up that reputation from the Great Depression because people ate them because they had to. And
that's a whole, that is some place I'm glad you brought that up. People ate certain things on the frontier. When we went through survival school, you eat whatever you can catch in your snare. And, I've eaten field mice and, little roasted field mice on a stick and stuff like that. I've eaten raccoon. I've never eaten possum. But, when you're talking about ethical, if you're not gonna eat it, don't pull the trigger. But what about pulling the trigger on a hound and you send him out there and the next thing you know he's got a possum gutted in the creek, and in essence you just pulled the trigger when you sent your hound out there, and now you've got a dead possum on your hands. And do you have an ethical dilemma? I mean, I don't personally. I've walked on. Okay, here's a story. I was walking through this real thick, grown-up pasture. This farmer had let it go, but he still had it fenced. And there were like 1.5 inch maple trees growing up like 4 inches apart through this thing. And I was walking down a path, and I smelled something that was just, disgusting. And I kept walking up a little, and I find this dead cow all bloated up. And here's the old grinner sitting right on top of him, just getting ready, and he was all slimy and covered in guts and everything else. And guess where he had been? Inside that dead cow. Do I feel obligated to eat that possum or any possum after that? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I've never tried it either, but for some reason I just really like those animals.
Do what? Possums?
I just really like opossums, yeah.
Oh, they're interesting animals. They really are,
yeah,
but
I think they're super cool.
But they're yeah, we can make a whole show about possums. What
about pigs? Pigs are vile creatures. They're nasty, man. Those things will eat anything. I saw one devouring a rotten deer. I've seen them eat each other after you shoot one. Leave it lay, which again gets back to our conversation.
Apparently, you can throw a dead body in there and it'll be gone the next day.
Fried green tomatoes. Yeah.
I shot this pig, and the guy I was with was like, "No, just leave it there. They'll come back and eat it." And I was like, "No, what?" Like, you kind of yanked at my chain. Come back hours later, they had totally like disemboweled it and started eating her. And I was like, "Dude, you were just hanging out." Anyway, so pigs are gross. They're really just as omnivorous, opportunistic, and disgusting as a raccoon or an opossum, but yet we love eating pork.
Sure.
So like, it's a really like nuanced thing, because obviously animals that are risky to eat and also live a pretty wretched lifestyle are amazingly delicious to eat. Look at shrimp and crabs. They're undersea scavengers. They're nasty as heck, and they're delicious.
They're so good.
Look at chickens. Chickens are horrible. A lot of it goes back to it's a biblical concept. It goes all the way back to the 1st century AD. And you can trace it all the way back to the book of Acts in the New Testament when Peter had his dream, because the Jewish people felt that some animals were unclean to eat and some animals were blessed by God. And so...
in certain parts of the animal.
Yes, in certain parts of the animal. I mean, it was very legalistic about what... and it's still true today. You know, Jewish people still hold on to that tradition or that law, and they believe it's a law from God of what they can eat and what they can't eat. And Gentiles or Christians broke away from that. But do you know what I'm talking about? Peter had the dream about, you know, eating animals, and God said, come and eat, and it's okay, and all that stuff in his vision. I think that's where a lot of it comes from. So now we put rules on ourselves about what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. This is nasty, this is not. You know, I've got friends that won't eat liver, a beef liver, you know, and I'm just like, slice that stuff up and let's eate.
I wouldn't have 3 or 4 years ago, even though my parents will eat like beef and chicken livers and pate, and I finally started eating like pate, at least. The Wisconsin Supper Club life. But like, I think a lot of it too is like family tradition, however you've grown up, and if things get passed down or not, and how strong that stays in your family. And then that goes back to, you know, tradition and everything. Okay, these animals were good to eat, you know, all through the early Americas and all that, and then all of a sudden now someone decides it's not. Is that because other animals are just easier, and why are they more palatable? Like why a deer? Why chicken that lives a crappy life in a, you know, poop infested barn?
Oh, my chickens are free range.
You know, like you were saying, Chris, getting back, well, you're just an organic farmer. I'll give you a stamp on your chicken. You know, that kind of goes back to what you were saying, Chris, about the biblical times, is those people didn't understand foodborne illness like we do today.
No,
and
not
so
at all.
It's not kosher to eat pork, because in that area of the world, especially in the Middle East, trichinosis spiralis is really bad. Like, that's a real bad problem. And so by just making that non-kosher, we don't eat that. That animal is quote unquote unclean. Mm-hmm. That's just a way to protect the population from an illness they don't understand at that time.
It was a trial and error situation.
Yeah. Well, every way humans learn is. And, you know,
it's like every time we ate a pig, somebody got the craps and died.
Yeah,
man,
exactly.
Let's not eat pigs. Let's make a rule. Nobody eats pigs.
Bingo. And so like those traditions obviously last for millennia. And so I guess the question you were posing earlier is it okay, and this is if it's a not religious or some kind of like religious creed, if it's just like whatever other people that are just experimenting with meat that is taboo to eat, whatever, is it okay now to like reclassify raccoons as something that are good to eat? Because historically we don't eat non-hoofed animals because they harbor too many diseases. Carnivorans in general, we don't view as food from those extremely ancient kind of views on meat. And so now we understand, it's just a little tiny worm that lives in their muscles. Cook it to 160, you're fine. So, yeah, it's a really good question. And ethics are a tough one to tackle, because ethics, you know, vary person to person. And everyone is entitled to an ethical view of morality that kind of goes by their own compass. It's a tough one to say. I do think the needle is definitely moving towards eating and being more adventurous and inventive with what we hunt. We have more access to ingredients, recipes, information and ideas from others, and safety information.
Cooking methods.
To make these animals that were once, we don't know why eating a raccoon makes me barf a lot. We just won't eat raccoons. But now we know, that's leptospirosis. You just need to cook it at this temperature for this long and you'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like hunters now trying to be foodies.
Yeah. What do you mean? Explain that, Lauren.
Well, you know, we want to, not that we want to, but sometimes we feel we need to justify what we're cooking. So we come up with all these super beautiful ways to cook and display our catches or
Not in
kills.
my house. Crock pot,
Like
baby.
make it appetizing. You know, and it's that whole Instagram lifestyle too.
Yeah,
I
and
don't
I'll
know.
tell you.
I think that might contribute to it. Maybe.
I don't think you're wrong, for sure. I've seen that. Like, I've seen a lot of people that, but in the same way, that actually makes me happy. I'm glad people are doing that, because when I see someone be like, check out this, like, a possum braised, like, back rib with, like, parsley leaves and, you know how, like, fancy food shows, they, like, do the little
Right.
sauce spritz on the table, like, or on the plate. I like that. That's super cool and fun, I think. I don't know. I dig
Like this doesn't look like possum. Like this totally looks like something I would eat.
I'm admittedly, I'm the exact opposite, because in my house, the only meat in my house is what I harvest myself. So admittedly, I'm one of these people, not the fancy food people, but just like I eat a lot of weird animals because I live in a state and I have a skill set to allow me to do that. But the point I'm trying to make is, listen, all listeners, crock pot is your best friend. You could take a chunk of the most heinous cow carcass opossum and put it in a crock pot with onions, garlic, and a little bit of like your favorite sauces. Put that bad boy on low, come back 6 hours later. That's some fine dining right there. Shred that up, put it in some tacos, put it in some
You
burritos.
know it's gonna get hot enough.
Yeah, 225 for 6 hours could, like, you know, you could kill a wild boar in Chernobyl and put it in a crock pot. Come back 6
So
hours later.
radioactive material
Yeah.
just disappears in the crock.
The crock pot will denuclearify them, I promise.
You better put a disclaimer on that one. Oh.
So
We'll get some
we've
fan
talked
writing
about.
us.
You know, the other
So
thing maybe, you know, reaching here, but you know, a couple weeks ago we talked about scent and scenting and things like that, and we talked about, you know, familiar smells evoking, you know, bringing out emotions in people, and so, you know, some of these animals, when they're not the cleanest, they're not the most pleasant smelling animals when you're cleaning them and things like that. And a lot of times people
Or
are
when
just
you're
like,
cooking 'em.
yeah, I'm just
I
not going
gotta
to.
cook the raccoon outside.
Yeah, and I know people that say the same thing about, you know, wild hogs. Don't cook it in the house. You know, my wife thinks the same thing about fish. I always cook fish outside because it permeates the house, but I don't mind the smell. But I mean, a lot of times people are sitting there and they're doing this and they're cleaning an animal, and it's like, man, I don't think I can eat that, you know.
Yep.
Or somebody is standing by watching somebody else do it. I can tell you this: if Americans were living closer to the farm and knew where their meat came from, they would get past a lot of that. We live a very luxurious lifestyle where, you know, they've never been to a chicken processing plant or killed a chicken themselves, and so they'll eat chicken all day long.
10,000% agree.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's
Killing my first chicken, aka my rooster, that was eye opening. And I was like,
yours went a little worse than normal, though.
well, and then I get him dead, and I'm like, how do you gut a chicken? Like, I didn't even know, because I've only like done it to a raccoon.
does YouTube edit that out? Are you allowed to look at? Do they allow that video on YouTube, or is that something that they?
No, you can watch start to finish processing videos of like people doing full size like cows and pigs. I mean, they whack it in the head with a hammer and cut its throat.
Isn't it crazy though? I mean, what social media has allowed to be out there in the public eye and what's not. I mean, that surprises me that is even acceptable. It's got to be flagged for graphic content.
I think it's flagged for graphics. I know I tried to watch some like chicken processing videos, and I think it was the people who created the video just cut out the gruesome parts, either knowing that it's not going to be available to be watched, or I don't know. It's like people can't handle it.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're watching a video about chicken processing. Like, why can't we just show the whole process?
You know, I'll go back. I'm going to loop this back to the fad. You know, maybe it is this, like, there has been a huge resurgence of people wanting to get back to like farm to fork. You know, a lot of people want to eat more locally, people that want to like kind of learn to do this on their own. And I applaud them. I put on 3 butchering courses a year. So like I go to Texas, or local farmers. It depends on what I'm doing, but I'll get some pigs and I'll bring them to my home. I'll cut them in half. Well, kill them first. Cut them down cut them in half down the spine with a sawzall, you know, and skin them. And then I'll have people come over to my house and I'll teach everyone how to break a pig down however they want. So I also put on once a year, I do a slaughtering course where I bring a goat, pig, or small cow to my house, whatever I can find on Craigslist, and bring it to my house. And I have 2 people, only 2, because I want it to be very small, intimate class so that they can learn and everyone can get a bunch of meat. And we're going to do the whole step from the beginning to the end. We're going to kill it, drain it, hang it, skin it, butcher it, everything. And everyone is really excited. But most of these people have never, ever, ever done this in their life. And a lot of people are very shocked at how gruesome and frankly gross processing meat can be. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so, but I applaud all those people. They're happy they did it and they're happy they learned. And so I think that's a huge upside of this fad. I don't even want to call it a fad, this cultural trend of getting closer to our meat. Because I agree with you, Chris. I think as a society, we've gotten way too far away from our food. Yeah. And that's intentional. Yeah. Corporations, I sound like some kind of activist, but like corporations really do want to keep us away from that. Because the more behind closed doors, like look at all those ag-gag laws that made it impossible to film inside a slaughterhouse. Like they want to keep that away from us. And I'm glad people are bucking that trend. I really am.
And I think there's a lot of hunters out there, obviously not just hound hunters, that get the backlash like, oh, you're shooting these poor deer. And like, why don't you just go buy your meat at the store?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
you can kill it with your checkbook.
There's a lot of things we can say about that.
Yeah, you can kill it with your checkbook, but you can't actually go out and hunt it.
Right.
You know,
that doesn't make it any better. You know, you're getting organic stuff if you're going to get your own deer or elk, and that animal lived the best life.
You know, it's that luckily, I rarely hear that. Why don't you just go to the store? That only comes from
the most ignorant people on the face of the planet.
The dregs of anti-hunting. Yeah. But luckily that cultural trend towards getting closer to your meat has been very pro-hunting in general. So I support it fully for the most part. Yeah. I mean, I think it's been a great boon to getting people motivated to get back outdoors again.
I think that is the plus of it right there. Whatever we need to do to maybe not get more people involved in hunting, but to understand hunting at this point. You know, since the COVID thing, man, we've said it on the podcast before, but hunting license sales are up nationally, you know, as much as 30 to 40% across the United States. Fishing license, fishing tackle, you know, all that stuff is putting money back in the resource and supporting hunting. So there's plenty of people out there that are looking for the opportunity. And this isn't a new thing. You know, it's not like when Instagram was created, all of a sudden somebody decided to eat a possum, you know. No. I mean, during the Great Depression, and you mentioned it before, Seth, people were eating to survive. And on the frontier when we were settling, and we finally made a full circle on some of that. I mean, obviously, we're not living in the Great Depression or on the frontier these days, but people are more acceptable. And like you said, adventurous in eating. Somebody else ate it, and they didn't die. And so
we're
now
on a new frontier, Chris.
Hey, you just coined a new phrase. The new frontier. Yeah.
And you know, just because we're not deciding to eat whatever animal we take doesn't mean we don't respect that animal.
That's very true.
Too.
That's a great point.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. As a person, do you have to eat the game you kill in order to be an ethical hunter? Is that a requirement?
No. I think those are two separate things.
Explain on that.
Being an ethical hunter does not mean you have to eat what you take. You know, it's about doing it right by the law, doing it right by, let's say it's your dogs, and, you know, getting a clean shot and not harassing the animal or whatever it is. I think ethics don't necessarily need to go down into eat or not eat. That's that person's choice. But also ethics do go into what you use that animal for, what do you do with that animal. You can be an ethical hunter and go out and take care of a bunch of trash pandas for a farmer. I personally don't think it's ethical or like right to have those animals waste if their fur is in prime, but that's just me. I would want to take as much fur as I could.
What if their fur is not? I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here, because I wanna voice the other side as best as I can.
Yeah.
So
I guess I should retract and say that you're still ethical if you do the hunting right, and don't take the fur. Like, let's say it's out of season and the farmer contracts you to do some nuisance removal.
Well, okay, so I think one thing that a lot of people miss the mark on is nothing is ever wasted. You know, worms have got to eat too. Scavengers have to eat.
I was going to go there.
And nothing is ever wasted. So I think we put our own rules on, you know, what we would do and should I shoot this animal or not? Should I, in your case, like the example you gave with raccoons, you know, if a raccoon, they harbor a lot of parasites, a lot of different things. They're eating traditional food that feeds masses of people. So by taking that animal off the landscape, you could be doing a health, you know, a service to the health of your community. Some things just need to be managed, but just because you shoot it and you don't use it doesn't mean that it's wasted.
You know, and that's looking at it through a management viewpoint. I'm going to take it a step further and say that what if you're just out there bunny blasting in the public land wastelands of New Mexico where those rabbits aren't going to interact with humans ever, and you just shoot 10 and leave? Like, the thing is, you know, this is where it gets kind of sticky, tricky, because no, those are definitely not going to waste. Something is going to eat them. But why not? Like, why just leave them there? You know, as a kid, when I was growing up as a teenager, dude, we'd go out and hunt rabbits all the time with 22s and shotguns. Like, that's just what you did. Did we eat them all? No. You're 15. But, you know, is it wrong? Kind of, I think. I guess what the point I'm trying to make is,
you didn't have the knowledge either at that point in your life.
I like the point you made, Lauren, about how if it's within the law, then you're okay, because that's where I draw the line. Look, if you're on say you're here in New Mexico, we have 3 different species of deer that you can hunt, and you can only harvest one of those species one time a year, and you can only harvest 1 buck. Okay. So if a person went out there and shot 3 deer and didn't eat any of them, everyone would be enraged, because we don't have the numbers of deer to be out there just shooting deer. And even if he ate 1 and left 2 to rot, people would be insane. People would go insane. But say you're in Virginia, where there's insane amount of whitetail, and you're on a driven hunt, you shoot 6. Say you take 2 home, fill your freezer all the way to the brim, and you leave 4 out for the scavengers. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, the population is so robust and so overburdened that it comes back kind of to that management aspect where you can leave those 4 deer lay. It's okay. And I think hunters kind of start.
You're just going to brown out the internet with all the hate mail we're going to get on that one.
I'm really hungry for deer right now, so this hurts me.
This is just my opinion, of course. And that's the thing about ethics. It's an opinion. And that's the hard thing about tackling opinions.
Well, what really does drive ethics? I mean, is it culturally accepted, or is it, you know, what is it?
It's a little bit of both. You know, your viewpoints are shaped by the cultural pressures around you, you know? And so, like you're saying, there may have been East Coast listeners about to, like, want to jump through the screen and rip my head off. But from a person in my perspective, like, there's so many of them. I mean, you could donate a bunch to, like, for instance, when I was in Texas, the food banks will not take deer and wild hogs anymore because gracious hunters do not want to waste their animals. So they take them to be donated for, food for the hungry.
Right.
And they will not take them because it's undercutting butchers that butcher animals for a living. Well, they're butchering so many animals to be given away that they're wasting too much time, and the food banks are filled to the brim, so they can't take any more anyway. So there is obviously this ethical driver to supply meat to the community and help your community. But at the same time, there are so many deer and pigs that if you shot 50 a night and you just put them in a pit, it's not really the end of the world. I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make. It depends on how you're utilizing a resource, is if you're wasteful or not. That's how I've always kind of viewed it. And again, I guess ethics are always an opinion.
And I guess if the resource can stand being quote unquote wasted.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
We had a situation on a local farm here where a person imported a bull from another state. And Indiana has been a tuberculosis-free state for years. I mean, decades. And this guy's bull that he imported from another state tested positive for TB. And so the state, the DNR, the wildlife managers, decided that they were going to depopulate the whitetail herd on. It was a farm that had a high concentration of whitetails as well. And so they decided to depopulate the whitetail population on this farm. And guess
without testing?
They were just baiting deer and whacking them. And so guess who got to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We did, because we had the rifles, we had the game wardens went out there and we stacked deer up. Now the political pressure on it was they would test the deer. We would take all the deer in, we would put them in coolers, we'd get them down to processing, which means skinned and gutted and skinned. We bring them all out of the field, go put them in a cooler, and we had a State Board of Health official on site that was doing TB testing before they went in the cooler, and if they didn't test positive, then the political side of it was put them in there and we'll donate them. I don't know where they went. They could have gone to Rumpke landfill for all I know. In the end, so there's some political pressures on that as well. I mean, that's why they make wanton waste laws. We're certainly not advocating wanton waste, just go out and start pulling the trigger on deer and don't make an attempt to recover it or, something like that. We're just having a general conversation about the ethics of eating what you kill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. I think we should all be very clear on our stances, because I do throw out a lot of devil's advocate stuff and I don't want anyone to think that's my actual opinion.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right.
And
you're just talking scientifically based. And that kind of comes back to the conversation about the ethics of hunting. Some things just need to be managed, and people are like, and that's a whole slippery slope to go down too.
Like wolves need to be managed, but are we going to eat the wolf?
Exactly.
I'm not.
I'm not eating a wolf.
Why not?
I would if I was starving, but I'm not that hungry. Okay.
The same reason I won't eat a coyote, Seth. It's just way too close to relation to my dog.
Yeah, okay. So there's an emotion. There's an emotional.
There it is.
Yeah.
Because a raccoon and a coyote have an almost identical diet. So I mean, physiologically, they're both in the order carnivora. I mean, not very closely related, but they're closely related enough. And they're both generalist omnivores. So
raccoons have nastier scent glands.
Yeah, coyotes don't smell very pleasant either. Both coyotes I was butchering, I was like, this thing, perfect example, Chris. I was like, I hate the smell of rabbit guts, like hare guts. When I'm gutting a hare, it's like, it can make me gag. No joke. Like, I hate it so much. Yet, why am I compelled to eat them? Now, the majority of them go to my hounds, which that was another point I was going to bring up. Is it unethical to feed them to your dogs instead of a human consuming them? So what if you took those 4 deer, instead of leaving them lay, and you took them to a rendering plant and
or
just
fed them to your chickens?
Yeah, whatever. Threw them into a grinder, turned them into a big old log of meal, and you fed those to your hounds. Mm-hmm. I think that's an amazing way to utilize things. But I guess some people would be like, "Oh, you're just like," you know what I mean? It is a slippery slope. We feed most of the hares we catch to our dogs, and I very rarely leave them out in the field, but I have before, and I feel the same way that you do, Chris. I mean, I'm a biologist. I know firsthand that rabbit is only going to lay there one night. Something is going to pick him up instantly, most likely a coyote. And so, I mean, yeah, I like feeding things to your dogs. I think luckily we have carnivores as pets, so that one time I had a hunter shoot a javelina in the stomach with a 308, and obviously that meat was tainted with some unpalatable,
unsavory things.
Yeah. And so I just threw the whole rib cage over the fence to my dogs. They loved me. You know what I mean? They were like, woohoo. So, and the hunter was totally happy with that. He thought that was a great way to utilize it.
For me, I'll tell you when I stopped eating raccoons, and my son was with me. We were skinning this raccoon, and I peeled the hide off of it. And it was so infested with roundworm that it looked like threads coming out of the muscle. God. I mean, like a ball of thread.
Why do you gotta tell me this? But
gosh.
I haven't seen it yet.
At that point, and it's not like I was dining on raccoon every other night, but I had eaten plenty of raccoons, and then I thought, you know what? I know how to do this. If it ever came down to it, and I needed to prepare this animal or any other animal for food, I can. But at this point, no thanks. Pass the beef. I'll put some Bearded Butcher's seasoning on a steak and call it good.
Lauren, that raccoon you ate, I can guarantee you it had trichinosis. Guaranteed. Trichinosis is a kind of roundworm, and they are legendary for trichinosis. Any carnivoran is. Mountain lions,
like
bears, wild hogs. Not as that's hilarious. Is that wild hogs are the standard bearer for trichinosis, but they have it less than bears, raccoons, coyotes, and mountain lions. So yeah, Chris, when you say the roundworms, when I cooked the coyote, and this was just out of principle, I just wanted to give it a shot, but I was just thinking the whole time, I was like, I am going to put this thing inside a nuclear reactor to cook it until it's essentially jerky, and I'm going to cut it razor thin with a deli slicer so that it's edible. And I made pastrami out of it, and it was okay. It was pretty good. Oh well, okay, it was okay, but yeah.
It didn't help that the next time I cooked the raccoon was when I had COVID, or right before I had COVID. And so I had some leftover in the refrigerator that I was going to make into a barbecue, pulled pork sandwich. And then the nausea hit from the COVID, and I had that for 2 or 3 days. And I was even looking at it in the fridge, made me want to barf. So I threw it out. And honestly, now it's kind of unpalatable to me. That just flipped my switch. Will I still cook it for the dogs? Yeah. If someone wants to try it, will I cook it for them? Yeah. But am I going to go out of my way to make it again for myself? No.
Interesting. And, when there's certain animals, and again, it goes back to that emotional barrier, the cultural barrier, all that sort of stuff. But, when we're trapping, if we're doing a muskrat pond and you're harvesting some muskrats great to eat. It's awesome. Beaver is great to eat. I love eating beaver. And it's all good, but man, it's just something about the only time I'm going to eat another raccoon or a possum is going to be if I have to.
Mm-hmm.
And wolves and canines are off the table. I'm not eating them.
And okay, now is it the same reason that I had?
They're just too close to your pet dogs, or you just no way?
Yeah.
Who, me?
Yeah,
Chris.
Oh, well, no, it's just because they're rangy and they're, they make a living off of running and
they're rangy. Okay.
yeah, they're just nasty.
They're not beavers that are eating trees and leaves and stuff.
No, those are completely omnivorous and they're it's a fairly clean meat.
So, like, people won't eat Barbary sheep. They call them aoudad in Texas. And this is a classic example of, like, people being the smell of an animal doesn't necessarily carry into the meat. Because that's another aspect we still haven't touched on is some animals taste bad. And I'm going to just say it because I've eaten a lot of crazy things. Coyote, the one coyote I ate was a female. It was okay. Again, okay. The other one was a male. It smelled terrible on the outside, and its meat also had that musky smell, and it was awful. So the point is, like, Barbary sheep, the males have this incredibly powerful musky smell, and people, when you cook it, sometimes if you do a poor job processing the animal and you can get that oily musk on the meat, it will carry into the smell of the meat. And of course, we get a lot of our taste from our smell. You taste that awful smell. And so people get a really bad, taste in their mouth, quote unquote. And that's it. They're done with
the
Barbary
whole
forever.
sensory experience just
Yeah.
is,
And so, like,
but
some animals are gnarly. So it's like that gets into the weird ethical thing of, like, why are we harvesting monsters rams if they smell terrible and they may taste bad? Well, it's like,
but that hunt is incredible.
But
though it takes a lot of skill to actually hunt those animals too, right?
So
of course.
Yeah. But why do they hunt aoudad in Texas or Barbary sheep in New Mexico? Why do you hunt them? What's the main purpose that you hunt those animals?
So it really depends on where you are, but in general, it's just they were an imported game animal. They were imported for hunting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they've usurped a lot of bighorn habitat that some areas want to remove them to make way for bighorn. But
there you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
So some are a management goal for sure.
Okay.
And I'll never, now, just because an animal is a management animal doesn't mean it's okay to quote unquote, like, waste all the meat. I think nobody here is advocating that. But at the same time, it gets kind of down into that, exactly the point you're making, that kind of like nitty gritty of, like, you can hunt them because that's what they are here for. And also, in some areas, the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish wants to thin their population down or extirpate them locally.
Because they are putting pressure on the carrying capacity in that habitat for other wildlife species. And I think that we as hunters miss the mark on that message. We get cornered and trapped, and it's like, are you going to eat that? No, I'm not going to eat that. Well, why'd you kill it? And then automatically we go to, well, something's going to eat it, so it's okay. Instead of having the conversation and saying, because it's a management practice that needs to happen. If I don't kill this raccoon, then they become overpopulated and they affect others. Yeah. Disease that transmits to other animals, everything from parasites to distemper to all kinds of things that can affect other wildlife. So some things are managed just for the sake of preserving other animals that have the need to be on the landscape too, and I think we miss that as hunters. And you can say the same thing about predators, especially, is the reason we hunt predators is because they have to be managed.
And then you can also go a step further too and talk about how our hunting, boosts the economy and the conservation of, the entire area.
That's
buying
the
those
strongest argument, I think. Definitely.
Yep, buying those tags, the bullets, the guns, all the little accessories that you need to hunt.
The money generated hunting an individual of a species benefits the population as a whole, and that has a hard time for people to understand.
Yes.
And that's okay. You could, here's something I also don't want hunters to back away from, and this is something that we need to be eloquent as possible about saying and understanding this. But there are people that will never understand this, and we'll just have to be reasonable and be civil. But you can't say that about a jackrabbit. They have no management goal, and they don't really have any impact for the most part on humanity anyway. But hunting is fun, and that's something that people need to like we need to rationalize and speak eloquently about, because coursing is a blast. Mm-hmm. Watching the interaction between hound and hare is extremely fun. I'm not hunting primarily for the meat. I'm not hunting primarily to manage rangeland and manage rabbit populations. No, I'm hunting because coursing is fun. And so
and you get to hone your skill. Your dogs get to hone that skill.
Yeah, but I mean, even if they weren't, the point is like
well,
it's
they have to in order to hunt to make it fun.
Yeah, but I mean, I couldn't even have had them. You know what I mean? Like the it's okay to we need to also as a community stand up for ourselves in a, like I said, in a tactful way. You could be very rude about this point, so I want to make that very clear.
Eagle fun, let's put it that way. Like, we're not advocating for going out just to have fun and poach a bunch of crap.
Well, but I'm not poaching. That's again.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I'm following the law, and also, again, it kind of comes back to, you'll find nobody in this world that respects and loves hares more than me. And I put a lot of my own time and money into the Pittman-Robertson Act and other ways with the goal in mind of protecting the habitat that those hares live on, because that benefits me, but it also benefits our pronghorn hunters. It benefits our cattle ranchers. It benefits people that just want to recreate out there and see beautiful prairie. Everybody wins. Yeah. And that's an important way to talk about it.
That's right. You know, even if mom and dad want to load the kids up and take the wildlife loop to go look at stuff, that elk, that antelope, that deer, that raccoon, whatever their wildlife they see, has a cultural value at that point. And us hunting adds to that, the management of that land and those animals that even non-consumptive users are enjoying. And I don't think we need to be ashamed of that. We should be prepared to be able to transmit that message in a way that is informative and tactful and all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And also, I wanted to, also talk about how it's tough. I guess I want to ask you one thing, Chris, before we get too lost. But what do you think is the right thing to do with raccoons in general? I wanted to ask you this a while ago, and we'll get back to where we were going. But what do you think is the right thing to do with a harvested raccoon?
Well, at this point,
in season.
Yeah, I'm not sure how the seasons work in Indiana, but
okay. So a quick breakdown of the seasons is November 8th to January 31st is the taking season, and then our chase season goes from February 1st to October 25th, where you're not allowed to take animals during the chase season. However, nuisance wildlife, and raccoons are listed as nuisance wildlife, can be taken at any time of the year with written permission from the landowner. So, obviously, in July, then the fur's not prime, and I've already said that I'm not going to eat it. So if I'm out there doing a service for the local farmer or a landowner, or somebody that says, "Hey, come and take some of these raccoons. They're eating the cat food off my porch," I don't feel compelled that I need to eat those, or I'm definitely not going to skin them. And in the state of the fur market right now, what is the point of skinning them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I did last year, I tanned all mine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted some wall decor. There were some special raccoons there. Sorry, tangent to interrupt. And then I don't have personally anything made yet out of raccoon, so I'm saving a bunch of them because I want things made.
Well, it's not like I'm going to skin enough raccoons to revert back to the 1950s of the college student and wear a raccoon coat. It's probably not going to happen. So that is a question that I find myself killing a lot fewer raccoons these days than I did 20 years ago. And that leads to a whole problem in and of itself. Now I'm not taking them because I feel that pressure too. It's like, what's the sense of killing that? But
I'm not taking them because I still want to hunt them.
Well, but if you want to keep, I'll say this, if you want to keep hunting them, then you need to take a few more. Because if you don't, then they'll manage themselves. And this is something that Jim Williams in his book, Path of the Puma, he kind of he was talking about mountain lions, but, predators as a whole, if something happened to all the people on the face of the earth, this stuff's going to work itself out. They're going, wildlife's not going to go. If everybody was just raptured off the face of the earth at one time, everybody's gone. It's going to take care of itself. However, that's not the case. So a lot of times the hunting and the regulation of this hunting is not only done for the health and well-being of the animal, but it's also done for the cultural acceptance level of how many animals you can have in a certain area and how it's going to conflict. Most of our work and most of the calls that I would get, especially in the springtime, were about nuisance animals, nuisance wildlife. So, for me, personally, based on my experience and things like that, I don't lose a whole lot of sleep if a farmer has got real damage and he needs me to take raccoons. I don't go in there and slaughter everything, all the animals on that place, because like you, Lauren, you got to be, I am a conservationist, but I also understand that some of the animals need to be removed so that other stuff can thrive.
Mm-hmm. And that point you were saying about how the cultural acceptance level of an animal on the landscape, that kind of went back to our last episode when we were talking about wolves, or 2 episodes ago when we were talking about wolves, like how many raccoons are culturally acceptable to be on the landscape. And another point that you were pointing about in the Path of the Puma analogy you're making, which I thought was really a good point, is when a lot of people will be like, well, why do you have to manage raccoons? Why don't you just leave them alone and let nature take its course? And I'm like, listen, this is what I say, and this is from a person who's in this field. There is no such thing. I'm going to say it again. I said it on a prior podcast. I'm going to say it again. There is no such thing as a world where humans don't play all the important roles. We are the dominant animal on this life and are in this world, and we have altered every habitat on the planet to fit our needs, and other animals just cohabitate that world. And so humans have a massive responsibility to manage animal populations to the way we see fit. And that's a really hard pill to swallow for some people, because we live here. No one is you're never gonna give up your house because this was once raccoon habitat. Like if a bunch of people were like, hey, raccoons lived here first, you need to give up your house because this is raccoons' place. You'd be like, nope, those raccoons are going down. So we're going to manage the raccoon population to make sure there's not so many raccoons that they can't storm my house and overtake it. You know what I mean? Like,
and make sure that, our pets and our farm animals and everything stay healthy too.
Yeah. So that's it was kind of a silly tangent, but the point is that humans, we are an integral part of the landscape, and we always have a need and a right to manage the animals around us to the way that as a society we see fit. And that is the point of wildlife professionals, as well as a democratic society, shaping, voting, and pressuring for these norm shifts and these ethical view shifts. Because obviously things that our ancestors did we find egregious, and things that our ancestors did we find admirable, but it's up to us. And that's the beauty of living in a place like America, is that what someone in Virginia may find egregious, people in New Mexico might find completely normal. And our wildlife values and professionals can shape our law on those views. Obviously, California has a different wildlife view than Idaho does.
Right.
And like it or not, I mean, that's just how it is. And I think it's pretty great overall. I guess, yeah, humans manage wildlife. That's what we do.
After all the conversation, that we've had about, and this is about eating, I still think that people just need to be prepared to be able to justify why they hunt at a higher level than I'm going to eat it. And I think that's where that's an important important role. You know, don't get me wrong, and I'm not knocking anybody that wants to eat a raccoon. Just make sure you cook it properly and don't get trichinosis, because once you get that, you've got it for life.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know if you have it? Go
get tested.
Yeah, most people don't, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure I cooked them enough.
But the big picture is the main thing that I wanted to accomplish with the podcast was just having that conversation to prepare people to be able to talk in a wider range on why we hunt. It's not always to eat, and it's okay.
And that's honestly like the first question that I get asked, whether I say, I hunt bear, I hunt raccoon, I'm going to go hunt mountain lion, whatever it is. They're like, why?
Yes.
And we've got to be, there's multiple facets on why each of us do it. And not everyone's the same. But yeah.
Right. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying I think it's fun. I enjoy hunting.
Take a person out there and show them. I've taken people that are on the fence about hunting, taken them out there with my hounds. By the end of it, every person either is A, this is awesome, and I want to come out with you more, or is B, I see what you mean. There's a lot deeper of a level to it than I originally thought. I thought it was people out here just being bloodthirsty, and no, there's so much more to that. And I'm like, yeah, I really respect someone that can say that. That is like, hey, this still isn't for me, but I get the dogs, the land, the game, the quarry, everything about it. I get it. It's a lot deeper than you think. And we're not advocating that every listener in the world has to be this like, hardcore hunter advocacy, like champion. But I definitely think, I think we speak for all of us here, that I want all the listeners to just have these thoughts in your brain so that you can present our best foot forward as a community to the wider world.
Right.
And
you bring up an interesting point right there, Seth. You take that person out there. You're never going to convince them in an argument on Facebook. You're never going to convince that person. But if you can take them out there, it all goes back to relationships. It all goes back to that episode we did about leadership, and we've got another one coming up about leadership. But that's your role right there as a hunter. Is to demonstrate leadership ability and be willing to take that person, because once you build that relationship and you've got that person either in your buggy or your truck, or you're walking to a tree, or they're going to have a million questions, and that's your opportunity to converse with them. Nobody's nearly as brazen when they're sitting there looking at somebody as they are on the keyboard. So that's your opportunity right there, and we can capitalize on that by being able to have these conversations in a civil way.
Mm-hmm. And we don't need to go in saying, I'm going to turn this person into a hound hunter. Like, this is the goal. Like, I want them to be
never
right. I'm just get them to understand and see it from our perspective.
We just don't need anybody else voting against us, really. I mean, that's really what it boils down to at this point. Right.
The best weapon, I guess weapon is even
or
a little
even
bit too harsh. The best tool in our arsenal is to just show how much the dogs love it, and how much we love our hounds, and how much we love the game. People think that we hate what we hunt. And I'm like, dude, I got a statue of a jackrabbit out of my house. It's like 3 feet tall. You know what I mean? Like, they're like my favorite animal in the world.
Is it a wood carve?
Huh?
Is it
no,
chainsaw carve
now?
Oh, okay.
I'm working on it now. It's a chimeneo. So it's like a little fireplace, and it looks like a rabbit sitting, and then the smoke comes out of its ears. So like, yeah, we're working on it now.
No way.
So it's going to be at my new house.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, yeah, I'm freaking obsessed with jackrabbits, and also I'm obsessed with dogs. So it's only natural that I'm doing this thing. And I also was not really that into jackrabbits until I started seeing how amazing they are as a running machine. But anyway, that's the point. You get to explain to these people how much we admire the whole thing that is hunting. It's not just treeing a bear. It's not just catching a jackrabbit. It's being out with your friends. It's enjoying the nature, enjoying all these aspects, the history, the companion between human and canine, this this deep bond that we share with the wild world, with each other, interpersonal relationships. I don't know. I'm gushing. I love hunting.
I've got a tear in my eye.
But yeah.
No, seriously. I mean, I've never had somebody walk away from a conversation. If I took the time and I was going to explain in a civil way, it's like, do you eat a raccoon? No. Why don't you eat them? And then I go through the whole thing. This is why they carry disease. It's good for them to disappear. Most people sit there and they look at you and like, yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. and it's all cool from that point forward. But I applaud every person out there that is being a foodie. Good for you guys. I am happy for you. I love to cook. I fix all kinds of stuff. My family always checks. I fixed deer heart a couple weeks ago and some shish kebab stuff. My family had no idea what it was, and they ate it. And not until after were they, told what it was. And it's not like they're lining up for the next one, but they enjoyed it at the time. But it's that emotional block that they started thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's all good, and I just think we kind of, if you want to eat a raccoon, Lauren, you eat raccoons.
I'm good for now. But
and if you want to eat coyotes, eat coyotes, Seth.
No, I don't really want to. I just wanted to see what it was all about.
Sure.
So what are other people eating? Have we gotten comments on that? What they're eating and why?
Mountain lion is pretty much I knew what to expect on that one. People like to eat mountain lions. It's people that have had it enjoy it. And
it's like pork.
Yeah. And I've eaten it. It's very good. Even ground some up and turned them into, brats and things like that. Wonderful. No problem. But I do know some people that don't eat them because the smell repulses them. It's like, I hate. And a couple of those people are professional guides, so they have to deal with that quite a bit. And it's just like, I'll eat a beefsteak. I'm good. Mm-hmm. I'll eat a pork chop. It's okay.
And that kind of comes down to the novelty factor too. If you kill one elk a year, I feel like everyone would be pretty upset if someone didn't eat that one elk. Mm-hmm. But if you're catching like 500 coons a year, I'm not really expecting someone to eat that many. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I get it. Yep.
There's a lot of
I don't know who has the time to process that much raccoon. Holy moly.
There's so many other things you can do with raccoons that I think you can get past it. We talked about everything coming back full circle. You can process the fat on a raccoon and make oil lamps. Render the fat. They make wonderful oil lamps. And during the frontier days, you can actually, got a friend of mine that's a coppersmith, and he would make little oil lamps, and he would want the raccoon oil to sell with his lamps at black powder events, and makes a wonderful little lighting device in camp.
That would be really,
so you can't just
cool way.
You can't just stick a wick in like a chunk of fat and light it. You have to. I don't know anything about this.
There is some work you have to do to it first. You can render it down.
Yeah. But it's a little too rancid and a little too sooty for inside use when you're just sticking the wick in the fat.
Why does your house smell like corn in a dumpster?
Yeah.
Hey, I got a question. This is tangential, but I was kind of, when I said that, I didn't know, obviously, what I'm talking about. But, hey, you two, what is a good quota a year for a raccoon? Say it's a boom year for raccoons. They're overflowing. Every dumpster's got a whole litter in it. What is a good year of raccoons for a good coon dog? What would you, if you were like Chris?
How hard you're hunting, and are you going for prime fur, or are you hunting right at the beginning of the season when they're not quite prime and they're still blue?
Okay, break it down to me because I don't know any of this stuff. So, like, what would you say? I treed X amount of coons this year. What would be like a realistic, like if someone's like, I treat 1,000 coons, you'd be like, no, that's not true. Or is it? I don't know. What is a good year?
I don't know. Like last year, it was just me and Piper, and we treed just in season, not chasing season, in actual hunting season. And we didn't hunt early right in the beginning of the season either. We treed probably over 50 coon. Because I took about half of them.
What do you think, Chris?
I actually journaled Jazz's first year that she hunted, and she treed her first raccoon at 4 months old. So in 8 months, I treed 120 some, around 120 raccoons. And about Rim, my dog, doing it. That's a whole nother story. But, you know, it's pretty easy. It depends on where you live too, you know. If you live somewhere where the raccoon population is thinner, then if you treat 25 a year, then that's a pretty good year. And if you live
I'm happy with one a night. You know, whether I'm going out 3 nights a week or 1 night a week, you know, I'm going to try for more, but like the other night I went out and
Are you talking about just shooting one a night?
I'm seeing
one a night.
Seeing one a night.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what I care about, is seeing them, not necessarily shooting them.
Yeah, and
I shot a couple this year.
Yeah, I was basing on, you know, walking to the tree, looking up and seeing a raccoon in it.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just curious what like a good year, because obviously I meant like if the population was thick. So pretend you could take the population out of it.
Yeah, if you had 100% ability, free reign to hunt anywhere you turned a dog loose or anywhere your dog treed, then, you know, and you wanted to shoot every raccoon that you treat in a year with a good coon dog in southeast Indiana, you know, it wouldn't be unusual to hit the 200 to 300 coon mark a year. But obviously there's too many limitations on that. You know, places that have those grotesque numbers of raccoons, you know, you go to an apartment complex. Yeah, you go to the apartment complex in the suburbs of Cincinnati, where are you going to hunt, you know? And coons know. They know, like, you go around Versailles State Park, which is right out here not too far away from my house. They know when Memorial Day comes, and they know when they start smelling the marshmallows on the campfires in that campground, and they'll just infiltrate the place. And you can't tree a raccoon, you know, 3 miles away from the park because everything's moved to the park. And then you think, yeah, I'll go up there and I'll hunt there. Well, Brookville Reservoir, you can't hunt in the state park, but you go to Brookville Reservoir and they've got recreational camp areas. Same thing. Raccoons infiltrate the place, and you go in there and hunt during the season, and they disperse. Boom, back out. You know, back out to the acorns and the fall woods and stuff like that.
What a great service you're doing to campers.
Yeah.
By dispersing those little dudes.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing, because hares are the same way. I mean, we always joke, you can't even, they're so hard to find on the prairie, but if you go anywhere near people's homes, agriculture, or brush country, you just see them everywhere. And we're always like, they know.
Yeah.
So, but.
Well, I think we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish with this podcast, and getting down in the deep weeds about why we eat, and why we don't eat. I think it's emotional. I think some of it is cultural. I think some of it is a little bit of a fad. And just like every other fad, it's like fashion, you know, it comes back around. And my great grandmother, I guarantee you, I know that they ate possums, you know. My great-grandfather was a hunter, and if he brought a possum home during the Depression, it went in the pot. But at the stage we're at right now in our culture, we've lost a lot of that. We've got a long way away from the farm. A lot of people don't know where their food comes from. So now it's time to kick that idea back in gear, and we've got a lot of work to do as hunters to re-educate an uneducated public.
Yeah, not necessarily farm to table, but field to table.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no raccoons coming to my table anytime soon. Maybe the dog's bowls.
I hear you.
But yeah.
You got any final thoughts, Seth? Wrap
I
it
think
up.
we covered a lot of everything we wanted. I just wanted to
No,
accentuate.
I want to know something.
Okay, go for it.
What is one thing you want to try that's kind of taboo that you haven't yet? This is for both of you, I guess.
I guess. Man, that's
Have
a
you
good
eaten
question.
kangaroo, like actual kangaroo?
I have not. I've eaten their rat brethren. No, but that's a great question. I've never thought because I've tried everything in New Mexico that I can get my little grubby paws on, but I've thought of animals that I don't want to eat, but I've never thought of one that's kind of weird that I do. I would say that something I don't ever want to eat is any kind of primate. I have no interest in eating any kind of monkey, ever. Ugh.
Copy that.
Just too creepy, too human-like. No, I'm good.
Doesn't look too much like folks.
Yeah, I mean, like, ugh. Anyway, I'm gonna answer that quickly. I think I'd like to. Well, they're not taboo though. I was gonna say sharks would be kind of cool. I've never eaten a shark, but they're not taboo. Tons of people eat shark.
Right.
Yep.
I'll get to that. How about this? I will answer this on the Facebook page because I can't think of one right now, and I don't want to waste our listeners' time. That's a good question. I will answer that on the Facebook group, and maybe we can have a thread for other people.
Mine is snake. I've never had.
Oh,
you've never had snake?
Yeah. No. I mean, it's
Very
not like I live
bony.
in snake country anyway. Like, and I'm not going to eat like a garter snake.
Spaghetti.
Yeah. And do all snakes like smell really gross on the outside?
No, not all do.
Okay.
But they musk. Some species musk when they're under attack, and others just bite you and then you die. So that's the kind I have. So,
Chris, do you have an answer?
I was sitting here thinking about the answer, and it's probably more romantic than anything. There's no real reason for it. But when I was a kid, Willie Nelson starred in a movie that Seth's probably never seen called Barbarossa. And he was shooting armadillos and calling them possum on the half shell, and he was shooting them to eat. So I always thought, one of these days I'm going to try to eat try it. I'm not saying I'm
Put
I'm
some
sure.
braids in your hair and a bandana on and eat some possum on the half shell.
Yeah, pass the bowl around.
This is my final thought. And
I'll
it's
never
more of a
get
final
stoned with
story.
Willie again. You ever heard that song?
Again, I don't know why you keep asking me pop culture references.
I was not talking to you. I was talking to Lauren.
Oh, I didn't even. You were talking over each other, and the answer is probably no. Like, let's be honest.
I'll never get stoned with Willie again. You've never heard that song?
No.
It's a Toby Keith song.
Oh, then maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, Seth, we're listening.
Okay, okay. So I was in Walmart once, and there's a cultural group of Hispanic people called cholos, okay? And that's just kind of like your old school lowrider culture. Well, a female cholo is called a chola, okay? For whatever reason, cholas love me. And I was in Walmart, and there was a chola that had a tattoo from her hand to her elbow in that calligraphy writing, and it said armadillo on it, on her arm.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I have no idea what that means. Lauren, you speak Spanish, but I know it.
Are you sure it was armadillo, not armarillo?
No, it was 100% armadillo. I will bring my wife in here right now as proof.
Why are you asking me about chola culture?
Listen. It's because I'm thinking.
I'm a gringa.
Maybe she's subliminally trying to tell us she has leprosy because armadillos carry leprosy, and she's just being nice.
Okay, armadillos are out. No more armadillos for me.
Yeah, they definitely have leprosy, so be careful.
I had no
Have
clue.
you seen their skin?
Yeah, it lives on their shell. Yeah. So careful when you eat armadillos.
I wonder if Barbarossa has leprosy now. He probably got leprosy.
There you go.
Yeah, that's why he had a beard.
Hide that leper face.
Yep.
Hey, I want to go back one more thing. Actually, I do have one more comment. I want to make a correction to something that we had said in a prior podcast, Lauren. Me and you were once talking about what happens if oil catches on fire. So,
And
yes.
you already made that correction earlier.
I
don't think Seth knew we were recording, and I didn't know either.
We were recording. Oh yeah, my bad.
He's been pushing that record button, and we don't even know.
I know. We just strayed into it. Well, I started off with the correction on pressure, and then we went into oil fires, and now we're going to discuss long-term mental health for Seth and memory retention.
No. False. We're going to talk about trust issues with Chris hitting the record button without telling us.
I think we need to do some trust fall exercises pretty soon here.
Yeah. All right, let's sign this thing off. Hey, until next time, you follow your hounds, I'll follow mine.